Oh, this is gonna be crazy.
Okay, destroy the building.
Okay, that was weird. Anyway, hello everybody, and welcome today to what is going to be a very, I don't want to say abrupt, but a very unexpected and not planned episode of SpraynPray1000's Verdict. I am SpraynPray1000, and today I'm going to be talking about something that I basically predicted was going to be a year in the making. I did not, 100% know it was going to be a year in the making. However, nonetheless, here we are a year after, well, it came out a year after, and like a year and some change, but we're in the year after that. Today I'm going to talk about the Kingdom Hearts 2.5 HD remix. Or no, is it the Kingdom Hearts HD 2.5? Yeah, it's HD 2.5, excuse me. Which is the sequel to 2013's Kingdom Hearts HD 1.5 remix. And basically, as the name kind of suggests, the Kingdom Hearts remixes are HD re-releasings of the old Kingdom Hearts games for PlayStation 2 and PSP. And in 2013, Square Enix came out and said that they were going to release Kingdom Hearts 1 Final Mix, which had never been released before outside of Japan, especially in America. Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories, which is a remake of the Game Boy Advance game. And a 2.5-hour movie with the cutscenes from a DS game which had been remastered for HD called Kingdom Hearts 358 over 2 days. And that was basically what was in the original, well, the 1.5 HD remix, released in 2013, kind of to renew the series before they move on to Kingdom Hearts 3, which will be coming out in the eventual upcoming years. And so basically, when they released it, people were, all but certain that they were going to release Kingdom Hearts 2.5, with obviously the remaining games in the franchise that had not been touched on or had not been updated with the HD treatment. And here we are, well, in 2014 in December, they released it. It was pretty much expected. Even Square Enix devs said that it would be weird to release only the first half of the trilogy and, not the remainder. So in the 2.5 remix, we have Kingdom Hearts 2 Final Mix, which also has never been released outside of Japan. We have Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep Final Mix, which is a PSP game that was... The original obviously was released outside of Japan, but the Final Mix version I do not believe was ever released outside of Japan. And similar to 358 divided by 2 days, or over 2 days, we have Kingdom Hearts Recoded, another DS game that has had its HD cutscenes, or has had its cutscenes made into HD, and it's basically a 2 to 3, and I think it's more like along the lines of 3 hours of cutscenes, as cinematic retelling is what I believe they say on the box. So it's a very similar format. You have your main game, your side game that kind of explains some stuff, but is very important to the plot line, and then you have your HD retelling of a DS game. So let's get into the beginning steps of this verdict, which is actually really going to be like literally a 2.5-parter. We have 3 games to talk about today. We have Kingdom Hearts 2 Final Mix, we have Birth by Sleep Final Mix, and we also have Recoded. So I'm going to start with Kingdom Hearts 2. Now, Kingdom Hearts 2 is the sequel to Kingdom Hearts 1, and actually it's really the sequel to Chain of Memories, and basically it follows Sora as he reawakens from his 1-year slumber. He continues on, he meets up with his friends Donald and Goofy, and, it's basically a similar flow to the Kingdom Hearts 1, where you team up with these 2 guys and you go to various worlds based on Disney movies, and some of them are original, to the Kingdom Hearts franchise, so they're more like Final Fantasy. You interact with a lot of different characters from the movies. Sometimes you adhere strictly to the plot of some of these movies, and other times, there's obviously going to be some divergences, to make way for gameplay and to make way for other stuff. But for the most part, you stick pretty closely to the plot of the movie, with the characters of the movie acting, pretty basically as they would Obviously, it's made to be a little bit more kid-friendly, you know, a little bit more accessible to maybe young adults. Really, I only say this, you know, maybe for the Final Fantasy style worlds and for one specific world in this game, which is infamous for the number of censorships it received when it was brought to America, which is based off of Pirates of the Caribbean, which in itself is a little bit more of a adult-oriented movie. Not too much, but definitely not anything Disney tier, Disney cartoon tier. And for the most part, the story of this game is pretty interesting. I mean, if you have played Chain of Memories, you'll kind of get the story a little bit more. I feel that there are probably a somewhat decent amount of people who might not have played it, but, you know, the first thing I should really preface this review with is if you have not played the 1.5 HD remix, you should probably start there. For gameplay reasons, for story reasons, you should start there. So I'm assuming that you've played the 1.5 remix if you're watching this verdict, or you're very familiar with Kingdom Hearts 1 and Chain of Memories and 358, and you don't need a refresher, you don't need to play them again. That's what I'm assuming, because given that this is a JRPG series with a continual story, you kind of need to have a basic understanding of what came before in order to understand what's going on now. It's not something you can jump right into. I mean, you could, but you wouldn't get the full experience, and it wouldn't be optimal, is what I'll say. So story-wise, I do like the way that they handle the Disney movies and the way that they travel between the worlds. I think the plot of this game is definitely a lot more hashed out than the first one in a couple of aspects. I do like the fact that, you know, they, at this point, you know, they had an idea where they wanted to plot the plot to flow, unlike the first Kingdom Hearts, where it didn't feel as, you know, that as deep. You know, certainly there were deep parts about it. There were, you know, very interesting parts of the story, but at the same time, you could tell that it was kind of meant to be a one-off thing, and if it did well, they would add on to it, and if not, they, you know, didn't have to worry about it. This game, I think they did a good job because they understood that now the franchise was pretty big. You know, it had a pretty good following. It was pretty popular. And because of that, they could expand the story, which is exactly what they went ahead to do. They could add a whole bunch of different stuff, build off the first game, go in completely different areas, you know, introduce a ton of characters, you know, reoccurring people. So you'll see a lot of Disney characters here and there that, you know, are outside their respective worlds and have very bigger plans and bigger plot lines, you know, like Maleficent. You have all this whole Organization 13, and again, if you've played Chain of Memories, you'll kind of understand the plot a bit better. As to, you know, Organization 13 and their ultimate goal, and a lot of the storyline that takes place between this game, between the first game and the second game. So for the most part, I was satisfied with the story. I think it was very interesting. It definitely had a really epic ending, really, really great ending. You know, similar, the first game had a good one, but this one, you know, was a little bit ahead of that one in my opinion. It was really, really good. So story-wise, Kingdom Hearts 2 is really cool. I like it a lot. I think it's really well done. And it's really interesting to see all these characters, you know, have these plot lines that continue to develop, whether they're Final Fantasy characters or whether they're Disney or original characters or anything along those lines. And Sora's story is definitely very charming and interesting and has a lot of good stuff to it. So the story gets like a pretty good 2 thumbs out of me. Very nicely done. I like that, you know, and it obviously leads into the next couple of games very nicely. However, I would like to, you know, stop right there and, you know, get to the part of the game I didn't like too much, which was the gameplay. Now, the first thing I'm going to start off with is, it might just be me, but personally, I did not like the gummy ship levels in this game nearly as much as the gummy ship levels as in the first game. Now, I understand that the gummy ship levels in the first game were basically very monotonous, very tedious, and etc., etc., but for the most part, the gummy ship levels in the first game were, at least in my opinion, you know, you could do a lot of cool stuff, and you could really modify your ship, you could change up stuff, you know, you could add a lot of powerful abilities, and in this game I feel they cap you too much. They really want you to fly a lot of these routes and unlock a lot of stuff, and I mean, I guess that's the evolution of the system, but at the same time, it feels a lot, you know, like a step back. I feel like I don't have nearly as much creative vision as I could have had from the first game, but they're certainly not too hard or anything, and I think that for the most part they did a good job of trimming them down to, you know, a decently sized length. So the average gummy ship level, which by the way, the gummy ship is how you transfer yourself between worlds in this game. The one thing that I will say though, and this is something that you'll also see in Birth by Sleep, is they fixed the world map. Before, you would have to either use warp drive to teleport between worlds or manually fly in between them. with options to maybe go through a warp hole that would take you to another part of the the overall world map. In this game, basically what happens is that as once you get the gummy ship and you're free to explore, the various worlds as they float in whatever universe, you fly over to a world, and each world will be locked at first, and all you have to do is simply fly to the gummy ship level in front of it. Once you beat it, the door is unlocked. You can access that world at any time, and you don't have to worry too much. So I do like the fact that the world map is a lot easier to navigate, and the gummy ship levels, you don't have to mandatorily do any. You can very much ignore a lot of them once you beat them once, and you don't have to play them again. And I do like the fact that they do feel a lot more fast-paced. There's a lot of cool stuff flying in the background. There's one of them that literally feels like F-Zero. You're barreling down this highway as, gigantic wheeled Heartless chase you and whatnot. And I think that that's pretty cool. I like that a lot. But for the most part, the gummy ship, again, and this is the kind of thing that I'm going to really get into in my review of this game, is that everything is good. Like, everything is presentable and fine. But there's some aspects of the first game I prefer to the second, and vice versa. So, immediately I'm going to lead into my next point, is one thing I really like about this game, and I said this at the end of the playthrough, the one thing I really hope that they retain for Kingdom Hearts 3 is this feature in the game, and it's called the Drive form. Basically, early on in the story and throughout the story, Sora acquires new clothes, which allow him to enter various different forms for combat. So, for example, one of the forms called Valor form allows Sora to dual-wield Keyblades, attack really quickly, it boosts his strength, which allows him to deal more damage with each hit. It gives him a lot of offensive-minded abilities, and basically it buffs his physical attack all around, and it's very, very helpful and very good. However, the drawback to it is that you cannot use any kind of magic, and you must fuse with Goofy as you do it. Goofy must be in your party, and you must fuse with him, basically meaning you only have two party members, Sora and whoever else, as you stay in Valor form. And there's other forms. There's Wisdom, which uses Donald instead, which is more magic oriented, and as you level up these forms, you get various abilities that you can use in basic Sora, and the drive gauge will fill as you attack enemies and collect power-ups, and it's a really cool little thing to really mix up the combat instead of it being, the same kind of grind like Kingdom Hearts 1 was. Also, there's a lot of cool abilities in this game, I feel, that really help not only, separate this game from being a one-button combat system, but I do think that the way that they managed, adding the square button to do various special moves is pretty well done. So I'll give an example. In Kingdom Hearts 1, your basic abilities were press X to attack. Depending on Sora's distance to the enemy, he would do a different attack. If they're far away and you had a certain ability equipped, you could slide over to them really quickly. If they were close and they, were maybe just a step or two away, Sora would do a special attack, that would allow him to attack maybe in a wider arc, stuff like that. They keep that in this game, but they also add the ability to say, during a combo, if you press square, instead of doing a dodge roll or a guard maneuver, you will slap an enemy into the air, and if they can be lifted off the ground, you can follow them into the air with, and continue the combo and keep doing more damage. If you press square at the end of your combo, you could do a big finish, which will do a lot of damage and hits in an area. If you tap square while not moving, you'll do a guard. If you tap square while if you lightly tap it, you'll do a dodge roll. If you hold it for a little bit, you can do a quick run, but obviously you need these abilities equipped. But it's really cool that they managed to, make it so that you could have all these abilities equipped, and you can pretty easily sift between them, instead of like, oh, well, it's kind of random whether the dodge roll or the quick run comes out. They did a good job of making sure that doesn't happen, once you understand the controls. I do like that. Another thing that I really like about this game is the aerial combat has been made much better. The combat is a lot faster paced, it's a lot more free-flowing, and it's a lot better, in my opinion, for this game. And I really like that about this game a lot, is the fact that the combat, the physical combat in this game, I mean, yeah, the Final Mix version had some additions, because it was not a remake, but more like a Final Mix, a rehandling of the first game, which added some of these cool abilities, but it is good to see, sliding dash and slap shot, and a lot of these abilities really help out with the combat. Another thing I do like are reaction commands, which are basically quick time events during battle, against certain enemies and certain bosses, you know, something will sometimes happen. Like maybe it'll be a cutscene thing, maybe it'll just be, you know, you'll be fighting, and something will appear above your or above your command menu, which is how you select different things to do in combat. And if you press triangle during that time, you know, you'll do something like, say, an enemy is about to attack you, so you press triangle and you quickly zip behind them, and, you know, you confuse them, or maybe you do a dodge roll, or maybe you do a big attack to them, maybe you grab them and use them to fight against other enemies, especially against bosses. It gets really cool. Maybe, you know, you might be fighting a boss, and all of a sudden you get a command, a reaction command. You press triangle, you know, Sora starts running up a building, or starts slashing buildings, and, you know, crazy stuff will happen. You know, you'll be running from a monster, and you do cool dodges and stuff. You know, really helps you avoid damage, and also adds to, you know, the coolness factor. And also makes the gameplay pretty unique, you know, that you can do some of this stuff. The one thing, however, that I will say about this system that I kind of wish was a little bit improved is that a lot of these reaction commands can only be used if Sora is on the ground. So, for example, an enemy might be about to attack you with a ranged maneuver or any kind of attack that you would normally be able to press triangle to either avoid or counterattack or use to your advantage. And a lot of times, if you're in the air, you just simply cannot perform this maneuver. The game will not ground you, you know, automatically latch you to the ground in order to use it. You will just be unable, you know, the prompt will appear, but when you press triangle, it's grayed out, and it won't do anything. That can be a little annoying, and I can see that could kind of screw with the gameplay aspect a little bit. It might mess you up, or it might potentially, you know, allow you to take a lot of damage when otherwise you would be able to get out of it. That's not to say that every reaction command is unusable in the air, but for the most part, the better majority of them are. And that's something I wish that could have been improved on a little bit. I feel that the AI for your teammates is pretty good. You know, I do like the fact that they do have a lot of optional boss fights. Also, one thing I do like is that the menu now has 2 different panels you can switch between. So typically, in Kingdom Hearts 1, the original menu was attack, magic, item, and summon, I believe, was the last one. It was weird, and at least in the final mix, it was the last one. In the original version, I think the last menu was left for, like, any kind of commands, but again, they changed that for final mix to triangle, because they had the reaction command system by then, I believe. But in this game, there's 2 different menus. There's 7 different commands you can choose from. In each window, attack is available as the first one. But in the standard window, you have your typical attack, magic, item, and then drive replaces summon as the final spot. And obviously, when you hit either of those or any of those, you get the magic menu, which shows you all your magic. You get the item menu, which shows you all the items on that character. You get the drive menu, which shows you all the drive forms you can sift into. Or if you flip to the second panel, you get attack, summon, limit, and I forget what the last one is. Wow. And party. So basically, summon is similar to the first game. It lets you summon various Disney characters to come help you. What was the other one? I just completely blanked. Limit allows you to do special commands, which is also something they added to this game I'll get to in a minute. And party allows you to change your party members on the fly, even during combat, which is something you could not do in the original Kingdom Hearts. You would have to go to a save point to rearrange your party. In this game, they streamlined it. So, for example, let's say you want to use Valor form, you know, and you have Goofy in your party, and maybe like some random Disney character, and Donald's on the bench. You know, let's say Valor form runs out, or you're done with it, and now you need Wisdom form, and so you need Donald. You can swap in Donald with a few quick button pushes. You know, he'll come out. It's not instant, you know, to give it some fairness, but he does come out during combat, and that's really cool, and I like that. Limits are something new in this game. They're a system that you use in Final Fantasy, but in this game, limits are used to do a lot of damage to a lot of different opponents. Pretty cool. You know, it's a very cinematic experience. Typically, you use limits with the Disney characters, but Donald and Goofy also have their special limits with Sora, and they consume all of Sora's MP. Now, this is where I get into the other side of what I don't like about this game. So I just did a lot of praising for the melee combat. I did a lot of praising for other stuff. I don't really like the way they changed the magic system, and I'll explain. So in this game, the magic system has been changed from, you know, something that wraps around your HP gauge, you know, and it's a pretty simplistic system. Only, you know, your magic doesn't go above 10, I think, to, you know, more standard Final Fantasy style magic, where it's like, okay, you have 100 MP, and each spell might cost, different increments instead of one or two bars. All the basic spells used to cost 1 bar. And, for whatever reason, they decide, I guess, to make this game a little bit different. So, for example, Cure will automatically empty out your entire magic gauge down to 0. And what happens in this game, rather than just being empty and without magic, period, until you pick up some items or pickups or whatever that replenish it, you stay in something called MP Charge, which is basically your magic is on cooldown, and then after maybe 10-15 seconds, you get the bar back. Well, it's probably longer than that. But after 10-20 seconds, you get the bar back, and it's fully replenished, which is cool. The one thing I will say, though, is I don't understand why a lot of these magic spells cost so much when they're not that good. Like, curing is good, yeah, like, it'll fully heal you, regardless. But the problem with it is that, if you're getting really bombarded by enemies, it doesn't really matter. They're going to eat away at your health bar pretty quickly, especially the bosses. So Cure in this game feels pretty worthless because, right off the bat, most enemies are going to outdamage your heal once you're done, once you're done healing, and then, well, you don't really have heal anymore. So I feel, at least when you're not in Wisdom form, magic has become kind of superfluous. At least in basic Sora form, magic doesn't feel nearly as helpful now. There is one spell which I have seen a lot of people say that is very overpowered. I've seen my good friend Instant Retreat has told me it's really good. Reflect is a really, really good spell. So I'm not saying every spell is garbage, but I just feel that magic isn't as much of a viable technique as some of the other games. And that's a little annoying, but it's not too bad. Also, sometimes I feel that the combat is just... It feels weird at some points, and it feels awkward against some enemies really fighting them. It doesn't feel nearly as free-flowing. At some points the combat feels incredibly smooth and intuitive, and at other points it feels a little wonky and out of place and kind of weird. But still, it's not terrible at any given point, They did add another shortcut menu, or another shortcut button, I should add. But yeah, graphics-wise, I think this game looks pretty good. You can obviously tell that this game looks much better than Kingdom Hearts 1. That's to be expected, so I'm not too surprised there. Another thing that this game does, though, is at certain points, at least this version, will freeze up. And I hope it's not my PlayStation, but in my experience, like, if I wanted to go into, like, Valor form or any kind of drive form, or if anything was happening, sometimes the game would just randomly freeze up and almost lock itself for, like, a few seconds. So that got me worried a little bit. It's not that big of a problem, but I'm scared that, it might actually eventually crash, if it happened enough. But yeah, little oddities here and there with the game. There's a lot more side quests in this game, and I like that, they tried to add more stuff. I feel that the worlds are kind of small, though. I don't think they're, as big as some of the worlds in Kingdom Hearts 1. At least some of the worlds. Like, Halloween Town feels a little bit too small. Like, I remember it being a bit bigger, in my opinion, in the first game. Also, they kind of make you revisit the worlds in this game, at least most of them, twice, which is a little weird. I'm not really sure why they went with that choice. So the first half of the game feels like Kingdom Hearts 1, pretty much, where you're exploring these different Disney worlds, you're reliving the stories, obviously with a little bit of a twist. And then they, once you reach, like, what I would say is the halfway point of the game, although not really, it's more like the 65-70% marking, they make you revisit all the worlds for, like, 1 extra hour or hour and a half of whatever. And, I mean, it's not like it's terrible or anything, but it feels like they had 2 different plot lines for this game that they kind of crammed into it. And I mean, it's not like either plotline is bad, I'm certainly glad the game is, 30 hours, but at the same time, it's kind of like, well, I mean, couldn't these have just been fused? Like, it didn't really add too much. So it's basically like you have to do 2 laps around the worlds, and it feels a little weird, because, you zip over to one place, you watch a few cutscenes, and then that's really it. And that's kind of what I'm tying in with. Like, the game doesn't have too much exploration. I feel that for the most part, the game is largely, you go to a world, you watch a couple cutscenes, you go into another room, you watch another cutscene, maybe there's a little special mini game you do or some combat. But for the most part, if you were to just play through the game and do no grinding and no extra anything, the game would probably be pretty short. It would be very cutscene heavy. And I mean, at some points I feel like there's not enough opportunities to really use a lot of the various things that they've given you. I mean, there's plenty of opportunities, if you go back and you grind or you explore a lot of these other areas, but there's only each world is only like a couple different rooms, very similar to the first, but some of these worlds feel pretty small and cramped. Like, I know the Pirates of the Caribbean one isn't that big. You know, Halloween Town isn't that big compared to the first game where it was gigantic and it was just like, wow, you know, they have such a big area. And the boss fights don't feel as epic, I feel. Like, at least some of them. Some of the boss fights are great, kick-ass, amazing, I love them. But some of the boss fights, like, compared to some of them in Kingdom Hearts 1, a lot of the bosses in Kingdom Hearts 2 feel kind of like rehashes of old bosses. Especially, like, the Oogie fight, the Oogie Boogie fight. What else was there? You know, like the Hercules fight. You know, a lot of different things in the game just kind of feel like, oh, okay, you know, you did this in Kingdom Hearts 1, here's a few added things to it, which isn't bad, again, but it just feels like, well, I hope they have a little bit more creative design the next time around, you know, maybe with Kingdom Hearts 3, where they kind of redo, not necessarily reinvent the wheel, but, you know, they make it float, you know what I mean? But, other than that, Kingdom Hearts 2 was definitely a fun game to play. I really liked it a lot. Definitely great. Now, on to the PSP game, Birth by Sleep. Birth by Sleep is really good. I really like Birth by Sleep. It's a prequel to the entirety of the Kingdom Hearts franchise. It basically, you know, explains a lot of stuff that happens later on in Kingdom Hearts 1 and Chain of Memories and Kingdom Hearts 2. You know, it basically fills in, you know, this backstory to this whole plot line of this guy called Xehanort and his evil plans, you know, for Kingdom Hearts, which is this almighty power. And it's set up into 3 different storylines. It's set up into 3 different playable characters whose stories interlap and intertwine. And one thing I really, really like about it is that no matter who you're playing as, like, they do cross paths at various points during each one's story, but no matter who you're playing as, there's always something in another person's story that you will not know about until you play the story. So it's not like you can basically glean 100% of the game from playing one of the campaigns or 2 of the campaigns. Like, even if you've played 2 of the campaigns, there's still stuff in the 3rd campaign that you're not going to know about, you know, character-specific stuff. And I really like how, you know, you play through one of the campaigns and, you know, then the rest are kind of, yeah, filling in the blanks, but, you know, there's always stuff here and there that if you've played the other games, you'll see it coming, you'll see it fall into place. And I really like that about the story of Birth by Sleep. Now, of course, that means that the game is basically you play it through 3 times, and the game is pretty much shorter. Each character's story is pretty short. You know, it's only about 6 or 7 worlds here or there. However, you know, basically it's about 30 hours to beat everyone's story, you know, if you throw in the grinding and whatnot. Which is about the same length as Kingdom Hearts 2 and Kingdom Hearts 1. So it's about the same length as every other game, just split into 3 different segments. You have Terra, who is more of a physical attacker. You know, strength is his forte. Smashing stuff, heavy clubbing blows. You know, he favors attack. You have Ventus, who is more of, you know, in the line between. He likes quick attacks. You know, that's his strength. You have Aqua, who favors magic and who favors, you know, stuff along those lines. And you basically play through their stories. They interact with each other. Sometimes you team up with each other. Other times, you know, you square off against other enemies. And it really sets up the whole plot line pretty nicely. As for the gameplay, unfortunately, is where the game suffers a bit. It's a port. It's a port of a PSP game on the PS3. So, I mean, it's not going to be perfect. You know, it's not like they remade the game too heavily. It's basically, you know, the PSP version with maybe a better frame rate, better colors, you know, better visuals, and some updated gameplay. I do like that they did bind the camera a little bit better, you know, obviously because they have additional buttons on the PlayStation. So you're free to be able to, you know, switch between a lot of stuff like that. I do like that they did that. I mean, you know, taking advantage of the PS3 controller. However, on the flip side, I will say that the frame rate sometimes dips a little bit. You know, the game locks up a bit when it saves, which is kind of ironic that Kingdom Hearts 2 is very quick with its saving, but Birth by Sleep locks up in the same collection. That's a little weird. But, you know, sometimes the game will take a little bit long to load stuff. Obviously, I guess because they have to sift through the various different formats, you know, of the PSP game at its core. And Birth by Sleep is fun. However, the combat feels a little bit blocky. It feels not as obviously polished as Kingdom Hearts 2 or even Kingdom Hearts 1 at some points. They have a lot of Kingdom Hearts 2 more modernized stuff in it. You know, they don't use the magic system. They use the command deck system, which is pretty popular in the DS games, and I don't know, at this point it's probably going to be what's going to be in Kingdom Hearts 3, but they do, they do have some pretty cool stuff. Well, I do like the command block system. It is pretty good. They do have a lot of cool commands like Zantetsuken, which allows you to deal heavy damage to an enemy. And I do like the fact that when you merge different abilities, you can learn various things for your character, like more HP, better drops for stuff, along those lines. And it makes the level up system from Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2, it's a better way to do it, and it fits better into the fact that it's a shorter game. So, for example, in Kingdom Hearts, whenever you level up, you get better stats, like better defense, better strength, better magic, and then maybe an additional ability, like, say, when you get hit, you won't die if you have more than 1 HP. But in this game, in Birth by Sleep, you actually learn different abilities like that from fighting and leveling up commands and then melding them together and then fully maxing out the experience for each command. Each command, as you fight within your deck, gets more and more experience, and it powers up, and then it can be synthesized with another similar command into a new command, which is very helpful, and I do like that system a lot better. Mixing and melding commands. I do like the fact that each character has his or her own strengths, like each one has a different block, each one has a different dodge, and they, for the most part, they all get somewhat similar moves, but they're all very different. They all have their own play styles. And I do like the fact of the converging storylines and all the other things. I am a little bit disappointed. I feel like delinking is a little bit superfluous, and I feel like delinking, I wish, would really work. Like, if you've completed other characters' stories, you could delink their different abilities into your new story, which, I mean, maybe it would make it overpowered, but it would be a cool feature, for those of you who aren't playing on your first story and you played other characters' stories. I would like to see that. That would have been a pretty cool thing. But really, the worst part about Birth by Sleep Final Mix is just the fact that it's a PSP game. Even the Final Mix version of it was a PSP game. So the worst part of it is just the fact that it was not designed to take full advantage of the PS3. Still very good, obviously. Maybe I'm harping a little bit too much on the faults here, but that is one thing that I did not like about the game. But for the most part, very, very enjoyable. And finally, we're going to get to the HD retelling of Kingdom Hearts Recoded. Now, Recoded was actually the better of the two between 358 over 2. Maybe not story-wise, but at least gameplay-wise. However, I don't know if it's because of copyright or if they just really didn't feel like, having to overhaul the entire game. They basically said that they were only going to take the cutscenes, so really there's not much to talk about here. It basically tells the tale after the end of Kingdom Hearts 2 of, some random stuff. It's really kind of a filler game a little bit, but it does have some things that advance the storyline and advance the plot, so it is kind of pertinent. I think the real joy, unlike 358, which had a lot to do with the story, and a lot to do, it basically sets up the tale for Kingdom Hearts 2, it's basically a big prequel to Kingdom Hearts 2, and I feel, at least for the most part, that Recoded's main thing was that the gameplay was really fun, the command deck and installing stuff into it, and the fact that, you're basically in a computer program, and each world is like its own little mini-game remix of the original Kingdom Hearts. That's probably the best part about Recoded, but unfortunately, because it's nothing but cutscenes, that's now lost, and it means nothing. It's really a movie, so really in this game you only have, again, 2.5 games. You don't really have a third game here. But what would I give the Kingdom Hearts 2.5 HD remix? When you think about it, Kingdom Hearts 1 and Kingdom Hearts Rechain of Memories each had their own problems. Each of them, Kingdom Hearts being the first of its kind, so obviously they hadn't perfected the formula. And Chain of Memories having a lot of problems with the gameplay, but at the same time being very diverse and unique. And it's really kind of hard to decide, again, each game has its pluses and its, and its bad sides, and it's really kind of hard to decide which one really should take the cake and where it really should fall in the scale of things. But I think that for the most part, I gave a 93 to the 1.5 HD remix. I thought it was a really good bang for your buck. It really had a lot to it, and it was really a lot of fun. I think that for the Kingdom Hearts 2.5 collection, I'm going to give it slightly lower. I'm going to give it a 90 out of 100. It is good. don't get me wrong, this is definitely something you should pick up if you picked up the first one, without a doubt. Don't even, question it too much. But I feel that the games, at least, first of all, Recoded, as a storyline, it's interesting, but at the same time, I don't think it carries the same weight as 358. Like, most of the goodness of Recoded came from playing it, from actually, the gameplay aspect of it. The story of it was admittedly weak, and I do like that, they didn't keep the stupid, disappointing cutscenes that they had, that were 2D whatevers. I do like the fact that they did add a little stuff to it, but for the most part, unlike 358, which obviously had a lot to it, was really in-depth, Recoded kind of disappoints a little bit there. Also, I do want to say that 2 shines in a lot of places, but at the other time, it's kind of rusty in a few others, where Kingdom Hearts 1 obviously did a little bit better, I feel. And Birth by Sleep has its own set of problems, not being as fluid and not being as, really, at least with the combat system, really in-depth as some of the other Kingdom Hearts games. So 93 for 1.5, 90 for Kingdom Hearts 2.5. Both are worth it, and definitely if you want to pick up and you never got into the Kingdom Hearts franchise and you want to jump in, obviously you should pick them both up. I believe there's even a bundle for both of them, although that might be gone. It was a pre-order bundle. You get 6 games, that you can play or watch at your leisure, and the only game that's going to be missing from this whole collection is going to be Kingdom Hearts Dream Drop Distance for the 3DS, hence Dream Drop Distance 3D. But other than that, if you can, read a synopsis about that or play it yourself, you have the whole trilogy. You have the whole collection at your fingertips that you can play. So it's worth the money. It's definitely a good deal, especially since these games are either old or, and if you're someone who played it, you never, you didn't get to play the final mix, but you were a big Kingdom Hearts 2 fan or whatever, and you didn't get to play the final mix. It was never officially released outside of Japan. I mean, you could have played it by importing it, but, it was never released outside of Japan officially. Well, here's your first chance ever, and I do like it. The box art is definitely a lot better, I think. It's pretty cool. But that is going to be it for this verdict. I am SpraynPray1000. I will see you guys for the next verdict. I really like the Kingdom Hearts trilogy, or, well, not trilogy, but, these 3 games, and I'll see you guys for, hopefully, Kingdom Hearts 3. We will do a verdict on that, and I think it'll be good. So, take it easy, and I hope you pick up this game. Really worth your money if you're really into JRPGs and you really enjoy it, and I will see you later.